Jamar Chase, wide receiver 12, last year, 87 receptions, 134 targets, 1,046 in the yardage, 9 touchdowns, an average of 10.3 targets per game. Thoughts on Jamar Chase?
I'd like to see his efficiency improve just a little bit, right? I love the 134 targets, but I'd like to see him at like 110 catches, right? And maybe that's a little bit too much, but even 102 targets on or 102 catches on 134 targets, 145 maybe this year, who knows? But I think the sky's the limit. Jamar Chase is a popular pick to be the number one overall wide receiver in fantasy this year, right? Much like we saw the Justin Jefferson breakout coming. A lot of people think that this is going to be Jamar Chase's year to do that. I've leaned that way for a little while, and I think I'm stepping back from that just a little bit. Like, I just think that having such a dynamic companion in T. Higgins and serviceable number 3 in Boyd, I think that makes it really hard for Jamar Chase to finish as the number 1 overall wide receiver in fantasy. So I think he's top 5. Like, I think we see improvement on these numbers. I think the touchdowns stay the same. I mean, they're hard to project, but it wouldn't surprise me if he got up to 12, right? And I think that's kind of his path to jump from wide receiver 12 up to wide receiver 5 is add 3 more touchdowns. And then it's efficiencies and yardage. Like, can we get him up to 1,200 yards receiving instead of just over 1,000? Can we get him to 100 catches instead of, the mid 80s? Like, all those little bits and pieces and points get him inside that top 5, which is where I do expect him to be. He's clearly being drafted as the number 2 wide receiver off the board. So it makes your ceiling really thin, right? Like, you can't really get better than number 2 overall, and it leaves a whole lot of room for disappointment. But I understand the allure. It's in a big-time passing offense. He's a young, dynamic player. Him and Joe Burrow have a chemistry.
He basically matched his rookie year this past year. He basically matched his rookie year in terms of receptions. He had more receptions. He had more targets. He had 4 fewer touchdowns and was 400 fewer yards. But here's where it gets fun, and I think why a lot of people are projecting him out to be that number 1 or number 2 wide receiver. He did all of that in 12 games. He missed the entire month of November, right? So, if you factor in the fact that he plays a full 17 games, which you can never predict injuries. You can never predict, missing time for anything. But if you stat out those numbers over the course of a full season, like, what an insane year that would have been.
When it's all said and done, I think where I'm going to see him kind of statted out is probably somewhere in about the 110 to 115 receptions. We probably see him flirt in the 14 to 1,500 yard range. And I think we probably see around 10 touchdowns. So, like, he's going to have a very, very good number. Now, where I just kind of projected all of that, that's mid wide receiver
and Derek,
1 territory. That's not.
I think those are conservative numbers, though.
Well,
like, in my opinion, I think those are conservative numbers over, what he is capable of. And I think that's kind of, I would see that if he is healthy for the whole season, I would see that as his floor. So there's your floor.
Yeah, I mean,
wide receiver 1 territory.
And where he ended up playing last year, right? He was also 6th in points per game at the wide receiver position, right? So kind of breaking that down and putting it a little bit more in that kind of range there. So he will do well for your fantasy team. He's going to be a ton of fun to watch on that one. But the point you guys have both made already is that the margin is razor thin on this one.